different interpretations. For as long as these comic book characters have always existed, there's always been a different interpretation of that character, whether it be in the comic books themselves or even just in different types of media like cartoons or movies. Even for video games themselves, for good or bad, for better or worse, of that creative process that came to be, and just seeing it in real time, you're like, well, I guess that just happened. And if anything, it just gives more eyes on the character, having a different interpretation that someone might like, and then maybe a different interpretation someone might hate. And I say all this just to say, Superman's no different.
Am I not your son? Superman!
Don't you want to know who that person is?
Superman's dangerous.
But I don't need you to protect me.
I wanted to find an excuse to actually talk about Superman, especially when season 2 is going to come out, or it's already episode 1 and 2 is out. And you might want to ask like, oh, why am I not talking about season 2? But I have to find a way to start somewhere, right? Like, comment, subscribe, it helps. Also, I really wanted to talk about season 1, also get my 2 cents on it, and also how I feel about Superman as a whole, as a character itself. I am going to get into a few spoilers from my adventure of Superman, so if you haven't watched it, go watch it and come back. But here we go, might as well just talk about Clark first. I actually really like Clark in this one. With Clark, it really feels like he's an amalgamation of 3 different things. 1, his era from Smallville. 2, his era from when he's like a reporter. And 3, just with a modern swing or modern zing to it. With it first taking elements from a Smallville era where he necessarily didn't know how to control his powers as well as to use his powers. Then it's also taking the elements of him first starting off as a hero and sort of growing into his own man. But Clark also going through that era from when he was in the Daily Planet and when he was actually a news reporter and sort of growing into that position. With the added bonus of Lois and Jimmy, how we just felt like we focused on those 3 main characters as a whole throughout the whole series. What feels like in the show where the spotlight is being shed a little bit, but not too much and not too overly to the next character, just mainly Superman still. And the last thing I have to talk about, which is just the modern zing, the modern thing that goes with Superman. That is a thing that's always been with Superman since the very beginning. Ever since his comics, he's always been in that modern era and tries to be the best of us. He isn't the best of us. He tries to make an attempt to be the best of us. And it also just always shows his problems and issues whenever he does go through them, showing that he's not perfect, as well as he goes through issues himself that he can't actually fix, or just trying his best in his own blue Boy Scout way, sort of being one of the main reasons why I do love Superman. But with Clark in this series goes through everything what I just said. With one of my favorite things that happens in this series is a classic thing that has a modern switch to it, which is his clumsiness. His clumsiness in this series, it comes from him not actually training and him not actually doing all the stuff he would normally do in a Smallville era. He does it in a later era, and he's actually has genuine clumsiness when it comes to Superman's strength, and that's kind of cool. But one of the main things I would have to say that I like about the Superman is sort of just like what is happening with a lot of characters in this moment in the comic book medium, which is just the identity crisis. You might as well just call it the identity crisis era of comics at this point, or a comic book media. Fuck the multiverse saga, which is happening everywhere and anywhere. We're talking about the identity crisis era, when you try to juggle everything at the same time, whether it be your home life, your superhero life, your job life, and at the same time trying to figure out what or even who you are at the end of the day, finding oneself while being oneself. With that seemingly happening a lot to Clark right now in this moment, where he's trying to attempt to figure out who or what he is in this whole series all the way up until the end, where he still technically speaking doesn't know, as well as his purpose and sort of goal of what he actually wants by the time we get to the end of the series, which feels like a nice build-up. That's not only with Clark, but with most of the things in this series. Everything feels like it's building up towards something and trying to craft and create this world that we have right now in My Adventures with Superman. And this sort of also goes with one of the biggest things that comes with this season, and it's the villains. The villains itself feels like it's a build up throughout the whole time. Like, I feel like we get a little bit of a taste of them in their own special episode, and then by the time we get to the end of it, we sort of have like a climactic battle between all of them. But it's like it's not enough. Like, I feel like we need more, and I think that we are going to get more. They just wanted to give us a little bit small taste of it, and then we're going to get more of it later on. And then on top of that, I do also think that is a pretty cool, interesting twist that like all the villains are basically because either the Kryptonian or maybe Brainiac has all these special weapons that are given to all of them, so they literally have a way of getting like somewhere up to a Kryptonian's level or Superman's level to be able to take him down. It's an interesting twist and theme throughout the whole season. The only thing I am hoping for is that in the next season that we get like a Lex Luthor that has his own tech, or the case may be just other people that don't necessarily need the Brainiac or Kryptonian tech and that can sort of stand on their own. But I'll still also be okay with if we just have all the Kryptonian tech and that's just a thematic thing with all the villains inside the show. But I will say is the person I had the most spotlight and I sort of like the most is Parasite, and it's also not because his color is purple and that is my favorite color, but Parasite was actually pretty cool throughout the whole way, being the delusional villain slash billionaire that thinks that he's right and everyone else is basically wrong. But then there's also one character who I specifically wanted more from. I felt like we didn't get a lot of him, and he felt more or less a comedy relief if anything, and this was Jimmy. I felt like we get a lot with Lois as well as Clark and their relationship together as well as them separately, but with Jimmy it just feels like a bit of a comic relief. We don't get as much with Jimmy itself. We do understand that he matters. We do get episodes showing and showcasing he matters, and they is pretty important to the group as a trio, but as a character alone, he doesn't really have much to say for him, and it sort of sucks. I hope for in season 2 that we actually get more Jimmy or something more focused with Jimmy. Also, another change which I seem to feel like it's interesting enough is that the mother of Clark is actually the more voice of reason than the father, because usually it's the father that usually gives the advice, tells him what's what, and I'm pretty sure he's done that before, but we don't necessarily see it in the spotlight of the show. It's usually the mother that sort of brings him back, as well as sort of talks and gives him advice here and there. Sort of feeling a little bit it takes two to tango. I wish, like, as well as with the father as well as just Jimmy, they both have a more prominent role in the next season. And last and certainly not least in this season is Lois.
I knew it! Hey, big guy. I'm Lois Lane. What's your name? Was it all just a cover for you? You lied to me, Superman!
Right, and I think she can be best personified by this quote: find purpose and succeed in it no matter how long it takes. This feels like something that's always been with Lois. She's always been an ambitious person, no matter what sort of incarnation you sort of put her in. The only thing I probably would say is, like, this time it sort of like endangers other people, especially in the beginning of things, where she endangers like not only Clark but also Jimmy when it comes to the series of the jobs, and wanting to do something specifically that she wants and being extremely selfish in that ambition. But throughout the series, Felix, she compromises a little bit. She not only apologizes, but she promises not to do it again. And one of the things that's sort of with her character, she doesn't like secrets or liars. And I think this idea for Lois in the show works really well, because it's sort of like a push and pull, go back and forth between her and Clark, because Clark is Superman as well as she's a journalist trying to figure out Superman, and how not only she doesn't like liars as well as secrets. It feels like it's a nice build up as well as justification for when we find out why she doesn't inherently like these things. And I do like the big old twist that her father actually is the general, so it all makes sense and correlates into like why she doesn't like secrets and liars, because her father is the general. The general probably wouldn't be able to tell her where he's going or what he's doing in a specific moment, so we'd always have to keep it a secret and lie to her probably, so to be like, oh, I'm probably just gonna go out for a little bit, or oh, I gotta do some secret military stuff, I'm sorry, I can't be here, and have to leave you for a bit. And I probably took a toll on her for a few number of years, affecting the way that she could probably have a relationship with someone else besides friendships, or maybe even just having a boyfriend in general, or just the idea of her wanting to be more in the spotlight, or when it comes to the news, for her to be sort of be seen by her dad, because her dad wasn't there for the last 22 years. Having journalism be one of the easiest spots for her to be seen. Sort of really liking how it's crafted by the time we get to the end of the series, and how everything is laid to rest. Other than that, I actually had a really good time watching My Adventure with Superman. Tell me what you guys thought about in the comments. Tell me all the good, the bad, the ugly, what you thought was great, what you thought was bad, if you thought the show itself was bad. But if anything, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!